About County Clerk Kim Davis, who's become a symbol, an icon of resistance to the Supreme Court's ruling on gay marriage by not issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. My next guest says religious liberty in America is in grave danger. Tony Perkins is the head of the Family Research Council, and he's headed to Kentucky on Tuesday, along with GOP presidential candidate Mike Huckabee, for a free Kim Davis rally outside the jail. Tony, thank you for being here. You have written, "This is wrong. We jail criminals, not people of conscience." Explain.
Well, Michael, look, we have a long history in this country of accommodating people based upon their religious convictions. I mean, look at the military. We have military conscientious objectors. We don't say they can't serve. We don't force them to be in a position where they would have to take a life. We accommodate prisoners. We accommodate students. Even under this administration, they have changed the citizenship status where they don't have to pledge to take up arms to defend this country, not just based upon religious convictions, but upon moral or an ethical code. So this is unfortunate. It's a dilemma created by the court in the redefinition of marriage, and it's also a travesty because the Governor Beshear, could have easily resolved this issue by calling the legislature into session and making accommodations for clerks who do not want to be a part of same-sex marriage, simply allowing the name of a deputy clerk to be on the certificate rather than the clerk.
Tony, it's interesting to me that you make a military argument, because Professor Jonathan Adler in the Washington Post did likewise when arguing on the other side. Put that up on the screen. He said, think of it this way. Someone who objects to war due to his religious conscience has a right to be a conscientious objector and not serve in the military, even were there to be a draft. But he does have the right to serve as a military officer, draw a paycheck from the military, and then substitute his own personal views of when war is justified or that of the government. And the same applies here. Doesn't Professor Adler make a winning argument?
No, because there are many conscientious objectors who serve in the military, who serve honorably in the military, but are not forced into a position to take up arms. They serve as medics, they serve as administrative support, they serve in many capacities. What this is, if this is allowed to stand, what the courts have done here is to establish a reverse religious test for those who have a orthodox religious view about marriage. They would be prohibited, they would be barred from serving in a position of public trust. Look, Michael, for many people in America, I understand. Religion is kind of like the dial on their car stereo. If they don't like what they're hearing, they turn it or they push scan. But for others, for millions of Americans, their faith is like a GPS that guides every turn that they take. But historically, we have accommodated them.
But respectfully, it reminds me of that which we are fighting overseas. Here's another hypothetical. Imagine that it's not the Marriage Bureau, it's the DMV, and that there's a Muslim clerk who takes the position that the Islamic faith doesn't recognize the right of women to drive, and this person says, well, I'm not going to give driver's licenses to female drivers a la Saudi Arabia. We'd go crazy about that. We'd say, absolutely not. You're imposing your religion on society.
Well, first, the standard of accommodation is that it does not do harm to society. If in fact it offends, that's not something that we take into consideration. If they would be barred from getting a license, that's a problem. But if it's simply saying, you know, going to the next clerk, and that's what we're talking about here. And you want to use a foreign analogy? A little over a year ago, I was working to advocate the release of a young woman who was imprisoned by her third world government for her faith in Sudan. Little did I know that a little over a year later, I'd be advocating for a woman in the United States of America jailed by her own government for her Orthodox Christian.
Can I tell you, I don't think she should be behind bars. I think that's an overreach. But this is not some liberal jurist. Judge Bunning is a W appointee. He's a devout Catholic. He's the son of former Republican Senator Jim Bunning. You get the final word on this.
Well, look. Governor Beshear could solve this issue just like they did in North Carolina, make accommodations which we have historically done in this country for people of Orthodox religious views. It didn't have to come to this, but the governor there has refused to accommodate her beliefs, and that's wrong.
Okay, and I would respectfully argue I think she's now ill-suited for that job. But thank you, Tony Perkins. I appreciate your being here.